Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back to the My Favorite Things YouTube channel. In today's video we are going to be making a holiday card, but we're going to have a little bit of fun with this one, and rather than use traditional holiday images, I'm only going to use these stitched hexagon shapes. So the idea I have for this is I want to create kind of a gradient of color, and then I'm going to cut out the smallest hexagon from that color that we're going to add to this cardstock panel. So I've picked out 3 different colors of Distress Oxide inks. I have Peacock Feathers, Lucky Clover, and Worn Lipstick, and I'm going to be using these and adding them to this paper, and I'm going to kind of blend them into one another. Now, I wasn't really sure when I started the inking how well the red was going to blend in with these other 2 colors, but I figured I would just give it a try, and if it didn't work, I could just start over. So I started first with the Peacock Feathers, and then I added the Lucky Clover, and then I added the Worn Lipstick after that, and I had a nice transition of the 3 shades together. I wasn't sure if I liked that, so I ended up adding a little bit more of the Peacock Feathers on the other side of the Worn Lipstick, but I'm not going to use that at all. I really ended up liking the Peacock Feathers into the green into the red shade there, so I'm going to use that end of the cardstock panel. And before I do any die cutting, I am going to do a little bit of distressing with water. So I'm adding water with a paintbrush directly over all of that ink. And then I'm just soaking it up with a paper towel. And you can see what we're left with is this really cool effect on the ink because it does react with the water. And adding that water and then dabbing it up with the paper towel just kind of lifts some of that ink off of there and leaves that really cool white splotchy effect. So once I had that done, I let it dry for a few minutes just to make sure it was going to run through my die cut machine okay. I took the whole piece and that smallest hexagon and I ran it through my die cut machine a bunch of times. And you can see there in that cardstock panel how I kind of had them positioned as I die cut them. And then I have all of these little pieces here now that I can use to assemble a pattern on my cardstock panel. So I have a white cardstock panel cut to 4 inches by 5 1/4, so it's slightly smaller than an A2 size card base. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange these hexagons onto this card base into a pattern. I'm not really sure what that pattern is going to be yet. I'm just going to kind of play around until I'm happy with how I have them arranged. So what I'm doing first is I'm kind of setting them up beside my panel and making sure that I have all of the colors facing the right way. Since it is kind of a gradient pattern that we've created, we want to make sure that the colors transition properly from one side to the other. So I do have this super sped up just so you could kind of see what I did first with all of the pieces to kind of figure out my pattern. And now that I've decided on how many I want to use and the arrangement I want them in, I'm going to take my adhesive and add them one by one onto the panel. Now I knew on the left hand side I wanted the pieces to kind of go off of the side, and then I wanted the pieces on the right hand side to not quite reach. So that's kind of what I did when I made my pattern. And now I'm just adhering them all down. Now, if you prefer dimension, you can definitely add some foam adhesive under all of these pieces before adding them on, but I really like the look of having them flat to the panel and then having the sentiment added with foam adhesive. So that's what I'm going to do on my panel here. So once I had everything adhered, I just flipped the panel over and cut those extra pieces off there. And I did want to show you that if you prefer to have your pattern go straight across, you can use those extra pieces that you trimmed off and add those to the other side. I decided to leave mine as is, and now I'm going to work on the sentiment that we're going to add. I knew going into this that I wanted to do a white heat embossed sentiment on a black strip of cardstock, so I've cut down a strip of cardstock small enough to fit one of the sentiments from the Snow Globe Sentiment stamp set. This is one of my favorite sentiment stamp sets this year. It is just so multi-use. There's so many different ways that you can use it. It's just a really nice font that works on a lot of card designs. And I decided to go with the Merriest Wishes on this card. I thought it was a nice sentiment to kind of go with this geometric design that we've created. So I used my anti-static embossing bag there on my cardstock first to make sure I wouldn't have any extra embossing powder sticking where I didn't want it. And then I just stamped that on there with some Versamark ink, which is a clear sticky ink, and added my white embossing powder. I used my heat gun to heat set that. And now I'm just kind of playing around here and trying to decide where I want to position this, if I wanted it to go right across, if I wanted it to have a decorative edge. And I decided to go with the slanted end and have it kind of coming off the left-hand side of the card the same way we have that pattern. Now before I added it on, I did add the panel to my top folding card base. So this measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And now I'm adding a strip of foam adhesive to the back of my sentiment strip. Now when I first started adding this, I wanted it to go right across the edge of the card, but I ended up trimming that down and having it just stay on the main panel. And as always, I used my T-square ruler to make sure that was perfectly straight before adhering it down. Now for just a little bit of dimension on here, I didn't want to really overpower the design. I wanted to leave that be the focal, but I did want a little bit of dimension on here. So I added a few clear sequins, and I also added some silver stickles to the center of those sequins. And then once I have that done, we have finished our card, and we have a really kind of different holiday card here. This design would work great for a lot of different occasions since it doesn't have any holiday specific images on it. But I really love kind of the transition of color and just the geometric look to the card that we've created. As always, I thank you so much for being here for today's video. If you haven't already, you can hit that subscribe button and subscribe to the MFT YouTube channel so you're notified of future videos, and I will see you in another one soon. Thanks so much for watching.